Thank you very much, Penny. I'd like to say two things at the outset. First of all, in looking at how Penny has constructed the panel, one tack that I thought about taking was to talk about how history is actually being taught in classrooms across Canada. And of course, that's a major research project which is still undone and which hopefully will get done. And in the months that I had to prepare for this, there was no way that I was going to get that done. So I took the refuge that academics in education also often take. I'm going to talk about what should be done, and which is in some ways an easier question than what is going on. The second thing is an apology for some of you who have heard me speak before. I'm using some examples in this which I have used for an embarrassingly long time, and so those of you who have heard me speak before will recognize these examples. I think they're powerful instances of what I'm talking about, so I'll probably continue to use them till the end of my career. Anyway, historical thinking in high school. I'm going to start with the term historical consciousness. And the term historical consciousness points to this question: what kind of past do we carry around for what uses in the present and with what vision for the future? So when we think about history, a common sense notion of history is just thinking about the past and interpretation of the past. When we think about historical consciousness, it's how we integrate notions of the past into our own everyday thinking, our everyday life as we live in the present for the future. But that notion of historical consciousness is, in fact, very challenging precisely for this reason, because it points to a bridge between our own subjective being, our way of knowing, our thoughts, our subjectivity, and the world out there, and not only the world out there today, but the world in the past, that huge, inchoate, virtually infinite experience of humanity. And somehow historical consciousness shapes this bridge, which is a very, very challenging one between me, myself, and that world out there. I further talked about historical consciousness in terms of a series of challenging questions. How did things get to be as we see them today? Which aspects are signs of continuity over time and which are signs of change? What group or groups am I part of, and what are its origins? Again, it's something about me, but it demands knowing something about the past. How should we judge each other's past actions, and therefore what debts does my group, however I identify myself, owe to others, or others to mine? Are things basically getting better, or are they getting worse? The question of progress and decline. What stories about the past should I believe? On what grounds? What about the past is significant enough to pass on to others, and particularly to the next generation? And finally, is there anything we can do to make things better? All of these are about us in the present, but they also invoke central historical questions, difficult ones, but central. So then we turn to the schools. And the question is, what kind of program in the schools, what kind of history program would enable students to be able to tackle these kinds of questions, to handle them in sophisticated ways? At the end of their school history program, what do we want students to understand? What counts as intellectual progress as they move from year to year in a history program? And if you look at the most basic kinds of our everyday quizzes that we might encounter in history classrooms, we might think that what counts as intellectual progress over the course of a school career is the accumulation of more remembered facts, which is, I'm saying, and I imagine you will agree with me, is an inadequate answer. I want to show you extracts, and maybe extracts aren't fair, but extracts from three statements of three different kinds of organizations about what they think history education is about. And the first comes from the mission statement of Historica. Historica, the pan-Canadian organization that we've been working closely with, Historica's role is to help all Canadians come to know the fascinating stories that make our country unique. This is the mission statement of Historica. When I put this up against the challenge of helping students to get oriented in a way that they can answer those questions of historical consciousness in a sophisticated way, I think this mission statement is sorely lacking. I mean, we could pick it apart, and I'm not going to do that, but I just want to present it to you. From my own provincial social studies curriculum in British Columbia, here are the skills and processes of social studies. Apply critical thinking skills, including questioning, comparing, summarizing, drawing conclusions, defending a position. Demonstrate effective research skills, including accessing information, assessing information, and so on. All very worthwhile, but nothing that specifically lays out what kinds of advancement in historical thinking would help students start to bridge this distance between past and present in a way that is useful to them in getting oriented in time. The third example comes from the Ontario curriculum, and much more focused on history, a specifically history course. History involves the examination of individuals and unique events, as well as of groups, movements, institutions, nations, and eras. Students learn how lessons from the past can be used to make wise decisions for the present and future, as well by exploring various points of view and evaluating a variety of historical evidence. They practice achieving a balanced perspective. This all gets closer to history, but as a guide to teachers making decisions in the classroom, it still, in my opinion, needs some work. But these are the kinds of statements that we have at our disposal at this point to help guide us in our thinking about historical progress in the history classroom over the course of students' school careers. We set up 2.5 years ago, we at UBC set up a partnership with the Historica Foundation to try to do better, to try to articulate a notion of historical thinking which would actually be of help to teachers in shaping a history curriculum and shaping history classes that would help students develop a more sophisticated historical consciousness that would help promote historical thinking over the course of their school programs. And what we wanted to do with this was to strike a balance between something which was simple enough that it would be easily communicated to teachers and by teachers to their students, and yet not overly formulaic, so that it stripped away the complexity of teaching history and arriving at sophisticated historical thinking. We ended up with 6 second-order concepts of historical thinking, and we distinguish these second-order concepts. This is following the British work of Peter Lee and Braz Ashby particularly. We distinguish between second-order concepts like these from first-order concepts.